The summer I was 20, I bought a bicycle in Amsterdam and cycled southwest across the Low Countries on what would be the final leg of a journey that took me from Dubrovnik on the Adriatic to Ben Nevis in Scotland. I was on my second day out, pedaling across the Dutch countryside, when the light began to fade and the late afternoon drizzle blowing in off the North Sea turned the road under my tires slick. A truck edged me too close to the verge, and my bicycle went over into the mud. I was not hurt, but I was soaked and filthy and had a bent fender to straighten. Without the shelter of a bridge, which was my usual hobo's recourse in bad weather, I knocked at the door of the nearest house to ask for a few moments out of the rain. Mrs. Outzhorn had watched my spill from her front window, which is where I guess she spent many a long afternoon. So I was not altogether a surprise when she opened her door a crack and peered out at me. She hesitated for a brief moment, then put caution aside and opened the door wide so that this bedraggled young Canadian could come inside. All I wanted was to stand for a few minutes out of the rain and pull myself together, but she wouldn't hear of it. She poured me a hot bath, cooked me dinner, gave me a bed to sleep in, and pressed on me several of her dead husband's things, including a waterproof coat. The next morning, as sunlight poured over her kitchen table, she fed me the best breakfast I ever had eaten and chuckled slyly about how angry her son would be if he ever found out that she'd taken in a complete stranger, and a man at that. After breakfast, she gave me postcards of local sights to take as mementos and suggested I go see some of them before climbing back on my bicycle and getting back on the road. The sun was shining that Sunday morning, and there was nowhere I had to be, so out I went for a stroll and a look. Her town has stayed with me ever since. Mrs. Outzhorn gave me more than the hospitality of her home. She gave me Delft. A most sweet town with bridges and a river in every street is how the London diarist Samuel Pepys described Delft when he visited in May 1660. The description perfectly fit the town I saw, for Delft has remained largely as it looked in the 17th century. Its cobbled streets and narrow bridges were dappled that morning by galleon-shaped clouds scudding in from the North Sea a dozen kilometers to the northwest, and the sunlight reflecting off the canals lit up the brick facades of the houses. Unlike that far grander canal city, Venice, which Italians built up from the surface of the sea on wooden pilings driven into tidal sandbars, the Dutch built Delft below sea level. Dikes held back the North Sea, and water sluices were dug to drain the coastal fens. This history resides in its name, delven being the Dutch word for digging. The main canal running the length of the western part of the town is still called the Oude Delft, the Old Sluice. Memories of the 17th century are peculiarly present in the two great churches of Delft. On the great market square is Nieuwe Kerk, the New Church, so named because it was founded 2 centuries after the Oude Kerk, the old church on the Oude Delft Canal. Both great buildings were built and decorated as Catholic churches, of course. The old church in the 13th century, the new church in the 15th, though they did not remain so. The light coming through the clear glass in the windows and illuminating their interiors bleaches out that early history in favor of what came later, the purging of Catholic idolatry, including the removal of stained glass in the 1560s, which was part of the Dutch struggle for independence from Spanish rule, and the fashioning of Protestant gathering places of almost civil worship. The floors of both churches belong quite securely to the 17th century, for they are covered with inscriptions marking the graves of the wealthier citizens of 17th century Delft. People in those days hoped to be buried as close as possible to a holy place, and better than being buried beside a church was to be interned underneath it.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.